break.
Got open man. DJ Moore. End zone. Touchdown. Touchdown Bears.
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on. Down he goes. Oscar.
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
Pressure coming. He's in big trouble. Down he goes. Montez Sweat.
And now, Bears Etc. brought to you by Miller Lite with the voices of the Bears, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer.
Well, we've hit another milepost in the 2025 offseason, moving into April with the NFL Draft coming up in 3 weeks and a lot of excitement being generated from new Bears head coach Ben Johnson. With Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak, episode 138 of the Bears Etc. podcast. And we're brought to you by Miller Lite. I am situated in Palm Beach, Florida for the annual NFL meeting. Tom and his Joliet headquarters. Coming up, we hear portions of Ben Johnson's nearly 30-minute sit-down with reporters from this morning's NFC Coaches Breakfast. Also, we hear from Bears general manager Ryan Poles from his informal chat with the Chicago media here in Florida. Tom, you've had an opportunity to listen to both parties and gather some opinions on it. I'm going to start with Ben, and we'll air some of this here in between. But really a refreshing conversation from my point of view. Again, he doesn't disappoint with how he frames what he's looking for, what he wants this team to be, and how they're going about doing it very methodically, but they're doing it with a plan. That was my takeaway. What are some of your takeaways?
Holy smokes, I have to curtail my excitement when I listen to these guys talk because everything that comes out of his mouth since the moment he was introduced at Hallis Hall when he became the head coach, I've been interested to hear what he has to say because he's a no-nonsense guy. He's got a no-nonsense approach about an opinion on positions, on players, on the things that he wants to get accomplished throughout the OTAs, the mini camps, and the training camps, the scheduling. The advice he's willing to take from former head coaches like Dennis Allen, the respect he has for guys like Eric Bieniemy, the thrill he has with coaching with guys like Antoine Randall L. and Al Harris and JT Barrett. You know, all these types of things that come out of his mouth is exciting to me because when you look at kind of the dysfunction and the way things concluded last year, Ryan Poles has done an unbelievable job of the decision-making process throughout him, his coaching staff, free agency, and onto the head coach and the coaching staff. And I think everything moving forward has a real positive tone to it.
Yeah, they feel they have a lot of opportunities here to really mold this team into whatever vision becomes from Ben Johnson and his coaching staff. They're still in the early stages of that. We'll hear from some of that in terms of like the playbook and stuff. But, you know, you don't realize as an outsider how much goes into starting from scratch with a brand new staff, many of whom he's never worked with before. And you're trying to create a game plan without ever having seen the players face to face, or rather, you know, just having just casual conversations with them on the phone. That'll change next week when the offseason program begins. But I would think time is of the essence because it may only be April 1st, but boy, when you start to hit towards the end of July and August, you know, that's not that far away for as much as you have to get done as a coaching staff.
Okay, time is of the essence, of course. But this is not the time of is the essence back to the conversation that I remember you had a couple of years ago with Ryan Poles about tearing this down to the studs and then rebuilding the whole process. Because this is still a two-story process, and that first story is already built. Now you're building onto that second story to analogize where you're not tearing it down to the studs. And this is something that Ben talked about in his initial introduction, that they want to win now. This is not a process that's a 5-year program. This is a 5-month program. And the 5-month has started a couple months ago. And so, yeah, they're into the midst of rebuilding this organization, rebuilding the building. And the building, I mean Hallis Hall. And so everything that I hear out of Ben's mouth is super encouraging to me because he speaks with experience and intelligence and a thoughtfulness that he doesn't necessarily need to be prepared for. And it shows me that he is smarter. He's as smart as everybody always said he was.
Thank you to our partners, CDW and Lenovo, who make amazing happen. Learn more at cdw.com/Lenovo. Let's dip into several segments. I can't run the whole thing. Time won't permit it, but Ben Johnson, where are they at in the process of collaboration and getting that playbook ready to rock?
We're still working towards that end right now. Our first step was to get on the same page terminology-wise, and so we went over a lot of the things that we had as a foundation there in Detroit. We went over a lot of film. Declan's been leading that charge. He's done a great job. I haven't been able to be present for every little thing, but I know that they've been able to get through all the Detroit stuff, and I'm looking forward to getting back into the building here end of the week and going into the next week when the players get in, even to start talking about how we can evolve this scheme and best fit our players.
To that end, when you get Caleb in next week or whenever the date is when they can start, like, are there certain elements of his skill set that you're going to have to like fine tune or tweak based on what you saw last year? Maybe some undoing that you have to do or habits that you want to hone differently?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any undoing, but there are some things that we're going to encourage that he looks to do a little bit differently. So, he's been predominantly a shotgun quarterback for most of his high school and college career, and so he's very comfortable there. We're going to work to see the comfort level under center and how much of that applies. We had a lot of success where I was last, that going under center for the run game did translate in play action. Whether that works for us in Chicago, time will tell, right? But there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and that's the beauty about this coaching staff is we have a lot of different influences from a lot of different systems that we'll be able to bring together a product.
How much do you think that just having someone who speaks the quarterback language how much can that benefit Caleb as he goes through this process, just even from like the construction of the room to the coaching staff around him?
Yeah, I think you need to be able to see the game as a play caller through the lens of the quarterback and vice versa. He needs to see it through the play caller as well. Why are we calling certain plays with the intent of the play? But for me, everything that I do really is to try to set it up within how he sees the game. And so will the rest of the coaching staff as well. Some guys do have quarterback backgrounds, other guys don't, and so we'll take all those opinions into account and see what sticks.
Okay, when you finish watching all of Caleb's film, he was open about the sack number, that he takes responsibility for some of those. What are things that you can do as an offensive coach with him and with everybody to like help bring that number down?
Yeah, it takes a village. I don't know what the number was in terms of seconds that he held onto the ball before releasing it, but we would certainly like to bring that number down. Part of that is how well can we scheme number one or number two in the progression open for him. The protection up front can get better. The route runners get to their spots faster. We can move the pocket a little bit more. There's a lot of things that we have at our disposal that can help with that process.
When you talk about the players coming in next week, I assume you've thought about that opening kind of speech, the opening message. What do you kind of want to get across to the team the first time you get a chance to talk to them?
Yeah, listen, it's a different regime. What happened last year was last year. We're moving on. We're moving past that. I haven't totally formulated what that presentation is going to look like quite yet. I tend to like to procrastinate just a little bit. That's where the best work tends to come out. So I'll figure that out over the weekend, though.
All right, a lot of things to unpack there, Tom. Let's start with the idea of Caleb Williams more under center, expose him to it, get more used to it, see if it works, because he really is a strong believer, Ben is, in play action being sold by an under center run game play fake. I know you probably agree with this 100%.
You know what I like about Ben there, the deception of a play action, the length of the throw, but it's run after catch, not yards after catch. We often refer to it as yak, and that's what you hear. But run after catch, I think, is different than yards after catch, because when you're talking about play action, Jeff, there's a deceptiveness on the line of scrimmage that gets defenders out of position. And out of position for a defender may only be one step or off balance. Then if you get it into the hands of one of the talented wide receivers or tight ends or running backs of the Chicago Bears, then they're capable of extending the profit of the play by run after catch. And so I like to hear that because to me, as an ex-offensive lineman, my favorite play throughout my entire career is play action passing. And it's something that you can be uber aggressive on. You can take a offensive line position that may have a certain limitation and then allow them to be more aggressive because you have the deceptiveness of play action passing.
Well, even though he hasn't done a ton of it, every bit that he learns, I'm talking about Caleb, under center, is going to benefit him in the long run in his career. The more you could do both and skewer a defense, it makes total sense to me. In addition to him, because I think you told me Steve DeBerg was one of the best play-action quarterbacks around back in your day,
yes.
right? Yeah, He was excellent at it. Peyton Manning, you could not tell whether Peyton Manning was dropping a throw or handing off. He sold it so hard. So that's the quarterback. What about the offensive line? How do they sell it?
The cadence. And that's why Steve DeBerg was so great. And that's why Peyton Manning has been so great, is they have the deceptiveness of their cadence inside the volume of that deception, a lot like Boomer Esiason. And if you can get an offensive lineman to, be stable in a stance and know exactly when he's going to explode, and then maybe you can expose a defensive lineman where he's jerking back and forth in a stance because he doesn't know exactly when the ball is going to be snapped. But one thing about Caleb, too, in play action passing is his athleticism adds so much more to play action because there's so many different ways that he could roll out. He could straight drop back. There's a lot of different things that he could do with his maneuverisms. And I think that's when you're going to see a lot more out of the abilities of play action that may be a little bit different than where Ben has been and where he's at now and who he's working with.
This podcast is brought to you by the official beer partner of your Chicago Bears. Tastes like Miller Time, Chicago. Go to MillerLite.com/BearsPod to find delivery options near you. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. All right, some of the other things they discussed, and Tom, you alluded to it, how they're looking at it analytically. They discovered in the last 3 to 5 years, which Ben is calling the modern day of football, the last 3 to 5 years, the obviously spreading of the field and the high-intensity passing game. Yes, turnover margin, all that does matter. It used to be the name of the game to win or lose is how you protect the ball, how you take it away. But they're looking at it now at something different, and he'll explain in what wins right now in the NFL according to the analytics and the research that he has been exposed to.
The way I understand it right now from our analytics team, the EPA in the passing game is really one of the most critical factors in determining wins and losses right now. That's probably changed over the last 5 years or so. I would have said 5 years ago, turnovers, takeaways, that was number one. From what I understand now, that EPA for the passing game has now surpassed that. So whatever team has the higher passing game EPA at the end of the game, they generally win that game. It's over 80% of the time. So it's a huge stat, and that's where we look to how do we help inflate that number, higher completion percentage, more run after catch opportunities. That's not to say we're not going to take our shots down the field and look for big explosive plays, chunks or touchdowns that way, but there's a lot of ways we can get that done.
As an extension of that, when you're trying to see the game through Caleb's eyes and him through yours, in the very earliest stages when the doors open for you guys to spend more time together, what do you focus on first? What are the ways that you guys start to build that?
You go back to the basics, and so it's the fundamentals of the quarterback position. What's our footwork going to look like under center from the shotgun? What are we calling the formations? What's the defensive identification going to look like? So that we're all speaking the same language. We got to get on the same page because it'll be a little bit different for him than what he experienced last year. And if we can mesh together and start speaking the same language, that's when things will really start to take off.
All right, speaking the same language, that's always the key. And I'll extend it to the center, to the quarterback, to the offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle. We got a lot of mention of Declan Doyle. He's really doing a lot, Tom, to help coach. It was described to me by Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, the other day, who's close to Ben Johnson. There is a relationship there. Press Taylor, obviously, on the coaching staff now as the passing game coordinator, is that Ben has to spread his wings. He's got to be involved around the entire team. So the offense is like a train, and you are running to hop on a car as you get back on the train as the head coach. But Declan Doyle and Press and the offensive line coach, Roshar, Antoine Randall, the assistant head coach, are all helping this process because, again, and Zach Taylor and I had this discussion too, and I've said this 100 times, when you're a first-time head coach, the last thing you do is coach in that first year, and he could not agree more. It is a blur. It's a merry-go-round, and you got to hop on and off that merry-go-round sometimes. So the staff he put together is so important. And then we'll get into this EPA. We'll explain it to those who don't know what that is.
There was a question asked of him, is he prepared for his speech the first time he sits in front of the entire team? And he says, he's a little bit of a procrastinator. So, yeah, he may not have that speech that's already set in stone and written down and gone over and stuff. But he said he's got a lot of trust for all of his coaching staff that they have the ability to sit in front of a team, in front of their players, in front of their position. And I think that's one thing you have to have, because being a new coach or being an experienced coach, you can't only rely on yourself to run the show. You got to have the understanding, the trust, and the reliability that everybody that you've brought on board, they have the intelligence, the moxie, the confidence to sit in front of this group of players and get your message across clearly. And I think that's the way you start getting respect inside the room, not only for the head coach, but each of the position coaches.
Hey, Bears fans, Steinhoffels is a proud partner of the Chicago Bears and now open in Orland Park. Steinhoffels is a Chicagoland furniture and mattress leader with the largest selection to fit every style and budget, and is 100% employee-owned. Shop in-store and online at steinhoffels.com. So EPA, those who are not into analytics, it's been written about a lot over the years and certainly in recent years. But for those who have not paid attention to this or want to understand about it, it refers to expected points added. And that metric, it measures how much a play changes the expected outcome of a drive. It could be based on many things. Field position, for example, down and distance. And then they quantify the difference before and after a play of the expected points. I know this is, it takes you in the weeds a little bit, but in its really boiled down form, Tommy, it assesses how much a team's drive is improved or worsened by a single play on that drive. So, obviously, a first down sack, a drop pass, tackle for loss versus, a catch at the line of scrimmage and it runs into a 10-yard run after the catch. So, expected points, as he referred to there, 80%. If you win that battle, 80% chance you're going to win the game. That is such a significant statement, but I think he's going to run with this.
As he should, because the analytics, they were introduced to the game a while ago, but I think each year there's a different analytic or a different approach to the way that you do these equations that figure into the head of the position coaches, a head coach, a team, the success and failure rate. And it's something that, fortunately, because we're around Doug Coletti a lot, we get exposed to a lot of these analytics that come out to be extremely meaningful. So if there's something out there that Ben has, not become aware of, is becoming more familiar with, and it helps his thinking process, I'm all for it. And you know me, I haven't been the biggest fan of analytics, but the more I learn about it, the more I get to talk to these people who are super educated and make it more understandable, the more I like it.
Yeah. Some things it doesn't account for, like the bounce of a football, the luck, or just a randomness of a individual play. But if it gives you a measuring stick on individual performance and team performance, if a guy's underperforming or maybe over excelling based on his talent or projected impact in that game based on a matchup, I mean, you could go real deep on this, and I believe they do. I honestly believe in today's NFL, the analytics staff, they go deep on this stuff, and whatever little thing, and it may not be little, maybe a big thing in the bigger picture, it gives you an advantage that you believe you're going to win a football game because of it. Like you said, I'm all for it too.
Well, there's something, and now I can't remember if Ryan Poles brought it up or Ben brought it up. They're talking about the philosophical thinking of the defensive line by Dennis Allen. And he's talking about a defensive line that he wants to attack the offensive line.
Ryan. That was Ryan, yeah.
Okay, that was Ryan.
Because I asked that question about what's Dennis Allen want.
You could have asked it louder, but you didn't but anyways, let me just finish my point here. Because when I was thinking that as an offensive lineman, I was thinking, okay, if you have one guy that is a dominating defensive lineman, or you have one offensive lineman that exposes vulnerabilities, and that's Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen's philosophical thinking is to attack each offensive lineman. You're going to win a lot of battles, and it's not necessarily making a tackle in a backfield. Can you disrupt the feet of a quarterback? Can you make a running back take an alternate route? Can you disrupt the timing and the flow of a passing play? So when I heard Ryan bring that up about Dennis Allen's philosophical thinking about what he wants out of defensive linemen, I thought that was a super encouraging statement to me.
We're brought to you by PNC, official bank of the Bears. All right, last thing from Ben Johnson, and I asked this as well. We brought up Eric Bieniemy and how much of an impact he's making in the room, how knowledgeable he is about all of offense, and how he's been embraced by Ben Johnson. Follow-up is this team going to be coached hard?
I've known of Coach Bieniemy for a long time. He's a big name in this league. He's done this at a high level. He's won a lot of games. He's won Super Bowls. That's always an appealing thing. And so when he became available, Ryan and Ted Cruz is another guy that was in Kansas City that they helped recruit him to come to Chicago for us. We had some great conversations of what the role would look like and how he could be impactful for us on offense. And I think he was really receptive to it.
What were some of those specifics of envisioning the role for him and how he...
Yeah, listen, he's going to coach the piss out of these running backs. That's what he does well. And so everybody that texted me after we hired him, I had probably half a dozen people that have worked with him in the past, and they said, you just hired the best running backs coach in the NFL, okay? And so that's his primary job. Along the way, though, over the last few weeks, we've been able to see he's got a very beautiful offensive mind as well, and he's been exposed to that West Coast system for, call it, 20 years, and so he knows a certain way of doing it, and he's been able to apply that, and we've had some really healthy dialogue and conversations as we've been going over tape.
You haven't seen him with the players yet, but what do you describe as the edge that he brings, obviously, in that realm?
Listen, when you're looking at the coaching staff in general, it's you want guys that are great idea guys, but we need a mix of guys that are really, they shine once we get out on the grass. He's going to be one of those guys for us. Antoine Randall is going to be one of those guys for us. Al Harris is going to be one of those guys for us. Not that they're not going to bring ideas to the table, but I think we're going to hear them vocally once we get out on the field.
You mentioned some of those guys in general. Is this going to be a team that's coached hard?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Listen.
What does that look like?
We're going to be very, very clear with what we want. Okay. The communication is going to be crystal clear. The structure is going to be there from day one. We're going to be organized, and then we're going to be consistent. And so, if we fail to meet the mark, the players are going to know about it. And when we do meet the mark, the players are going to know about it. That's how the coaching staff's going to coach. That's the guys that we brought in, and I'm really encouraged with what I've seen so far from that guy.
Does there need to be a more clear line between, because I know last year there was this player empowerment thing that obviously you want your players to feel they can speak up on certain things, but does there need to be a more clear line between the coaches putting forth what needs to be done and the players kind of interacting?
Listen, I can't speak too much on what went on in the building last year, okay? Here's what I know. I know how we're going to operate. I feel really good about the vision that I have, that the coordinators are going to help employ here once the players get in, and what we're going to become. It's going to be Chicago Bears football moving forward.
Okay, Chicago Bears football moving forward, and I can't wait to see what that looks like. So when you heard that question asked, what were you hoping to hear? Did he nail it?
Oh, 100%. You know, I think whenever you're kind of a new man on the job, you always have to look at the experiences of your supporting cast and what they are going to give you in terms of on-field coaching each and every day. And so when I think back in my own career, I think of guys like John Tierlink and Greg Landry. I think of guys like Dick Stanfield, Mike Ditka, Ed Hughes. And then I think with the Miami Dolphins, Mean Joe Green. All of these ex-players that were into coaching, they have respect of every position and every player that they're coaching, not only their position, but everybody that's on a football team, because they've built a career out of their playing ability, but now they're also continuing their career with their coaching ability. So I love what I hear, and I'm excited I'm excited to go to practice to see and kind of listen to the coaching because, fortunately, I think you have to spend a lot of time listening to the voices of the coaches, the corrections and the compliments that they're making.
All right, some other key points. Let's get into the personnel a little bit. Ben said they do have depth concerns over the entire roster that need to be addressed. So that's even just ready for training camp.
That's always.
Yeah, so that's one thing. They're looking to construct a roster of a variety of weapons, a basketball team. How many times have you and I talked about that? Affect every blade of grass with all shapes, sizes, speeds, and whatever your flavor is for that week when you match up against somebody. And that's how he also described the running backs available in the draft, even into free agency. We talked about the Caleb under center. Increase time to throw and get rid of the ball faster. Olamide, Zacchaeus, and Devin Duvernay. Speed and yards after the catch. How the ball found the slot receiver in Detroit. Yeah, it was one of the best receivers in football, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But prior to that, it was also Jarvis Landry and Danny Amendola. So the insinuation that possibly DJ Moore and Rome Odunze could be in that spot. Maybe it'll be a variety of them, Tommy, playing that slot role. Do you feel that slot role, in addition to the role that, say, Laporta plays in Detroit for the Bears tight end in 2025 and beyond, are two of the most significant positions on that offense?
Yeah. Okay. So bringing up what, he says, you can't have 6'4" across the board, but what I want these guys to be able to do is be interchangeable in the receiver positions they play. And so all these guys can play everywhere. I don't think if you just want to say, this guy is only a slot receiver, that's not the case. And I don't think that fits well with a Ben Johnson system. And when you talk about incorporating play action passing, you can have a chance to be a lot more deceptive when you have interchangeable guys, especially at the receiver position. And he talked a little bit about the running back position in Detroit, how Montgomery and Gibbs were a little different from each other in what they are able to contribute to the offense. So when you think about what these receivers are capable of being and what he wants them to be, hey, Rome and DJ and all of these different receiver groups, they have to have the ability to play everywhere so you don't give indicators every time you break the huddle to the opponent's defensive coordinator.
All right. DeAndre Swift earning some dirty yards. I think in our conversation with Eric Bieniemy, that's exactly what he was referring to. Okay. Left tackle, Braxton Jones, may not be ready for the start of the offseason program, maybe not 100% ready at the start of training camp. They'd like him to add some weight. Yep. We can also, compute that to power and strength as an addition of weight, good weight to be stronger. And then a guy like Austin Booker that we've talked about a lot, like him to be in the 250 range. Again, These are things that, this can easily be done. Booker's got a body that can absolutely add some pounds without losing his explosiveness and speed off the edge. Am I right on that?
Oh, 100%. I think Austin Booker is not even begun to scratch the surface of what he's ultimately going to be capable of throughout a really good and a solid NFL career. He's already showed that he's got an arsenal of pass rush moves. He's creative on his feet. He's a good athlete. And I think when you add strength and then you add weight and that adds strength to you, you're able and capable of doing a lot more things. And I was encouraged when he brought up Kiran Amegadjie, and he understood that they evaluated him and they had a high opinion of him as well, because he's going to have to be involved in the competition. You and I have talked about it a couple weeks ago that Austin Booker and Kiran Amegadjie are going to be two guys in their second year that they're going to have to take a major competitive step forward. And so I agree with, what they feel about, Braxton Jones, what they feel about Amegadjie, what they feel about Austin Booker. And, I guess we'll wait and see how they feel about Tyler Scott. They brought up Jaquan Brisker. So
Brisker clear to go.
Right.
You got to put it aside now and turn the page to a new plan here. Also, we'll hear from Ryan Poles as well. I don't know if I'm going to run that part of it in this segment, but he's looking at Kiran as the left tackle.
As they should. The thing about an offensive lineman, when you're trying to go through an evaluation process, especially when a guy comes from the Ivy League, but he's got the template and the build, and he's got the athleticism and the intelligence, you want to put him in the most difficult position first, and then if that seems to be a little bit difficult, and then put him to the next position, which is usually an interior position, right or left guard, or maybe even right tackle. I think Kiran Amegadjie is capable of playing anywhere, but you do, like I said, you want to expose him to the most difficult position on the offensive line to identify and see if he can fit in and play there. He talked about the positive snaps he had in Washington and a little bit more difficulty in Minnesota. But I do think that's a great, opposite ends of each spectrum that you have a chance to go in and watch and look at his traits.
This podcast is brought to you by the official beer partner of your Chicago Bears. Tastes like Miller Time Chicago? Go to MillerLite.com/BearsPod to find delivery options near you. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. All right. General Manager Ryan Pohl spent 15 minutes with the local media here in Chicago. Let's listen in to some of that right here.
All right, we'll get started. So I feel like we're in a really good place. Was really happy on how free agency went. Was able to really attack some needs that our roster had to have to compete and be a good football team. So I've been happy about that process and thankful for the staff and the work from the coaches to execute at a high level, both with the trades and free agency. And then really been excited about the work that we've done preparing for the draft. We're kind of about to go down the home stretch. Scouts are going to come in town and really start to nail down the board. And we've taken some good trips just with the coaching staff. We went down to Austin, went to Columbus, and had a good time meeting with the players, digging a little bit deeper, getting them on the board, understanding what they know, what they might struggle with, and just have better perspective on the guys that we're going to be looking at in the draft. So, again, thankful for the work that everybody's done in that process. This coaching staff has been outstanding with their evaluations, the volume of evaluations that they've done, and really been impressed with their ability to evaluate as well. So all of that's coming together.
Ryan, you talked about the draft board kind of marrying up with needs for you this year. When you look at that collection of 4 picks on days 1 and day 2, what can you get done, and how much of it is sort of seeing those as a collection of picks as opposed to just 10 on its own and then trying to make that package work together?
Yeah, and that's when we get back, and that's why I'm excited to get back and get working on that part of it, because once we kind of clean up the board based on some things that have happened in pro days, when we got injury reports back from the combine, and really get the board back, now we can start piecing that together to kind of see what is the collection of guys that we can get in that space and how can they impact our football team. The beautiful thing of what we did in free agency, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, is I really believe we can look at the draft as a situation where we take best available, which is really important. I think it's really important for this draft too, because I think just the way it is, I think kind of the top blues, I think that's condensed pretty small early in one, and then there's a wide range of really good starter level players that are going to range from probably single digits all the way into 50, 60, 70. So really trying to pair where the depth is and where you can get certain guys, and like I said, just the collection of those guys I think are going to be important in terms of moving the needle for us.
Are you learning that Ben's more passionate about this position as opposed to that position, or especially when it comes to offense and maybe looking at these elite weapons, as he would say?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the cool parts of our relationship right now. We see things similarly, especially on the offensive side of the ball. He has a creative mind on how he can use players. So when we're watching and there's guys that can do a lot of different things, and it's kind of how I think too, is like how can we put the opposing defense in a bind trying to figure out what we're trying to do. That's what made me feel really good about Ben too, because I've felt that playing against them. I can actually, without even talking, I can kind of feel his excitement with his body language on what guys are doing, how he can use it. You can kind of see him thinking through that. So that part's been really cool to work through.
Has a Kyler Gordon contract extension been put towards the back burner, or is it something that could still happen this offseason after all the money and cap space that's been used to this point?
Yeah, no, that'll still be a priority. For me, on our exit meetings at the end of last season, I told a lot of the guys, in terms of future, if it was contracts or coming back, anything like that, the important thing is I got to get with our current and new, the new coaching staff, and kind of see how the different players fit based on what scheme we're going to be running. So we've been able to have those conversations, and I know Kyler is a guy that we want a part of this moving forward. So the time of that, I'm not sure how that all is going to work out, but that is a priority.
Ryan, in your first few drafts, your first round pick has been a player at a position where it's clear you need a starter at that position. As you kind of said, your roster has you guys have a lot of guys who could be considered starters. How does that kind of change the way, and you talk about the flexibility when you're looking at guys at 10, and you might have somebody that you feel good about in that spot.
Yeah.
How's that change? I mean, a good problem to have, I imagine. How does that kind of change the way that you're thinking about these things?
Yeah, you're looking at it multiple ways. One, it's like short-term, long-term thinking. Two, it's, there's certain positions, like the premium ones, where, it's not guaranteed you're going to be a spot to get one of those players. So if we end up with a surplus, then let's just figure it out after that and compete, and the best guy wins. And if someone's got a young guy's got to wait, then he has to wait. Or other things can happen where other the guys that are currently in those spots can get opportunities for other teams. So there's a lot of different options that can pop up, but we're kind of weighing all of those things and put it into the equation of how we're going to handle the really all the picks, but 10 especially.
How do you weigh that in terms of finding a franchise player like a left tackle there, when Braxton's been doing this now going into year 4 but coming off the injury,
yep.
And going into a contract year for himself? How do you view maybe going that route at 10, thinking ahead to the future too with Curran?
Yeah, and then you throw Kiran in the mix, who not only do I still think highly of him, especially going back and just watching, the Washington game, there's a lot of signs of him being successful, especially the tackle position. But then he also went through a tough spot, which was, the way it was set up was unfortunate. Minnesota wasn't a great outing for him. So, but there's only a very small sample size there. I know that competition is going to, make the best of both those guys. So we're weighing that as well as just who's best available in the draft. So it's all a part of it. It makes it a little complicated when now you're talking about kind of 3 deep in that space. But I think it makes us really ask tough questions when we're watching, specifically like a left tackle. Like, is this guy going to make us better in year 1, year 2, year 3? How do we feel about our guys? Especially in a case where, Dan and Kyle and Declan really haven't had time with either one of their tackles. So there's a lot to work through, but I'm confident that when we sit down and kind of talk through it and look at the guys in this year's draft, and plus we've got to see how it plays out too. There could be, if we have 2-3 guys that we think are in that spot, they may not be there at 10 either. So we'll be ready for all the different situations that can pop up.
Kind of going off that with Caleb in place, any sense, I guess, this early where maybe some of these other quarterbacks might go this year? Is 10 in play for a team moving up, or where do you guys project maybe the quarterback conversation to be in this draft, which would help you get a player falling?
Yeah, I'm not, for where we are right now, I'm not confident on exactly where the first 9 picks are going to fall.
Yep.
But that's something that we'll look into, and we'll definitely weigh the option of, hey, if we can move back and collect a certain pick in this range, could that be really beneficial for us as well? So yeah, that'll be in play. The more successful we can be, especially getting into that space where it does.
What picture is Dennis Allen painting for you, and what he is looking for?
Yeah, that's another thing I should probably have said on the opener. It's these coaches and their communication has been outstanding. He wants a very aggressive attacking defense, especially at the defensive line, attacking the man in front of you, not so much playing laterally, two-gapping, or even penetrating in gaps. It's really just attacking the offensive lineman in front of you and creating disruption in the run game, and also to bubble back into the quarterback's feet to make it uncomfortable for the quarterback too. So that mentality is definitely going to be there. That's something we'll get done, and we have a lot, and we've done it, in free agency as well. Speed is another emphasis, both because of man coverage, but also just being able to get to the ball as fast as possible.
Be a lot of man.
Yeah.
Ben was saying today that Brisker's been cleared. What do you expect from him? And as a practical matter, do you need to kind of have a 1B or some good depth behind him, because you don't know whether concussions may pop up again?
Yeah. Yep. With Brisker, he's been cleared. He's fired up. He texts all the time about draft stuff, and he wants to win and he wants to be successful. What's that?
No safety.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he likes the Penn State tight end.
Yeah. So he's. I expect him to be himself. He's going to play his style of football. I've talked about it before. Like, even the last concussion that he had, it's unfortunate because I saw a guy doing it the way that he was supposed to protect his head. So I think that was kind of an outlier. And I think there's certain position, that safety position stuff, especially when you play a physical brand of football, which he does. So you're always going to want depth, really at any position, but it's definitely something that, we do have to consider.
Getting ready for the draft. I've heard this from more than one GM this week. Tom, about a half dozen at most, maybe just 5, the blue graded type players that teams put at the top of their board in their own building every week, let alone the draft. So like big names that are going to be plug-and-play starters, there's only like 5 or 6 of them in this draft. But then starting level players extending from the single digits up to 70, which would take you into round 3. So the draft is different this year. We touched on it last week in our podcast. It's different, and so best player available is being talked about out of the mouth of Ryan Poles. And also, you always got to temper that with, positional depth and whatever. So who knows where they're going to go? That's what I got out of it today.
I enjoyed listening to Ryan Poles today because you can hear the experience in his voice that he's earned over the last couple years. And to me, in the time that I've been around the NFL, this is one of the most difficult groups of talent to really do an investigative background work of who is going to succeed and who's going to maybe not have the success that they're projected to have. And so I was encouraged when I heard Ryan say, well, we're going to, we have the ability to take the best valuable player at 10. To me, that makes me think maybe there's some trades possible, because when you talk about a list of guys through the first 3 rounds, and even though I'm insulted because I was a 4th rounder and I always felt that I was going to be a starter, I do think that there's a lot of maneuverability. And right now, we talked about being a juggler. If you are a juggler, there's a lot of balls in the air, whether you have the first pick in the draft or you have the 31st pick in the first round. There's a lot of different scenarios I think that are going to unfold that draft night. And I think we're going to learn a lot about the draft on opening night. Probably looked at 30 drafts, mock drafts up into this point, and there's 5 different positions. There's, so many different approaches to the drafts and what these people think about the Bears. There's a couple guys outside of Ryan and Ben. I think everybody else is guessing.
And Ryan also admitting, because you could see it. There's pictures. He was at Texas. He was at Ohio State looking at that talent. Yep. Now, there's a lot of positions on both sides of the ball. So, who they're looking at is up in the air in terms of what we're guessing. Kyler Gordon, entertaining an extension. They're calling it a priority. When they get around to getting it done, that excites me. You know how I love this player, and I know you do too. So that's good news.
Me too. I'm glad that they're trying to get a deal done with Kyler, because when we talked about, I don't know if the podcast or it was the last ESPN show, we talked about Jack Sanborn moving on. And Kyler Gordon has the ability to play so many different positions that he could be considered a linebacker inside the thinking of Dennis Allen, or he could be that cover corner that they need in the slot. So Kyler, he's got great capabilities, and he's a super exciting football player. He's creative, intelligent, everything that you want to say about a guy that's has an important role in the future of this team.
I keep calling this breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are beginning to lead a path to the practice field and to Sundays at Soldier Field and wherever else we're playing here in 2025. And what's taking shape in my mind's eye, if I close my eyes and envision what this is going to be, and again, I don't have all the breadcrumbs yet, neither do you, but I'm liking what the vision is, whether it be Dennis Allen's style or how Ben Johnson is thoroughly investigating what this offense is going to look like based on the talent available and what these guys are capable of doing. It's exactly what I had hoped the Bears to be. Now, how this all takes shape and how soon it takes root and bears fruit, that's up to the games. That's up to the performance of the players and staying healthy and whatnot, and the development of Caleb Williams, frankly. But from the coaches, that's how I'm framing this. So if anyone asks me on any show, and I've done plenty of interviews here around the country, this is what I'm saying. So I like the mindset, the type of team they want, the physicality they want, the accountability they want, and now let's see it all come together. I think this is as most exciting as I've been in a long time.
I tell you, number one, I'm most excited for Ben Johnson because now he has total control of the team in front of him. Number two, I'm most excited for Caleb Williams because I think he's going to be involved in an offense that is going to protect him more. He's going to be involved in a little bit more deception at the line of scrimmage. He's going to have a cadence that can really affect the way the defense plays up front. And not, and I'm not dismissing the other great players on this football team. It's just that when you think of where Caleb can go with this relationship with Ben Johnson, I think the offense has incredible capabilities in front of it.
All right, lastly, some of the passage of new rules. Okay, you're allowed to possess the ball in overtime in the regular season. The original was a 15-minute overtime, amended to 10. So both teams have that shot. You want to give a thought to each one of these? Bring it on. We'll keep it quick.
I guess I'm okay with it. Give everybody a chance. If, you fight hard for that long, give everybody a chance to win.
Matches up now with the playoffs.
Yes.
Detroit's proposal to eliminate an automatic first down as a penalty imposed for defensive holding and illegal contact did not pass, despite the pleas of the Lions. I honestly, this is my thought, I always think it's an inordinate amount of punishment for that one play. You know what I'm saying? I agree. Yeah, it takes away some of your physicality. And some teams are prone to more flags because those players are willing to take the risk. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I agree.
All
Everything
right.
you said.
Okay. NFL approving proposals to expand the league's replay assist system. So replay officials can reverse flags thrown for hits to defenseless players, fouls for face mask, horse collar, tripping and running into and roughing the kicker. They cannot add a flag, though, if they see something where a foul clearly occurred but was not called. So that you can't deal with that. I like this.
I'm okay with that. 100%.
Yeah.
There are obvious penalties that are easily seen.
Yeah, like you get mad, irritated sometimes. That's a face mask. How could they not call a face mask?
Right.
You should hear Tom. And then the 35-yard line as a penalty for a touchback on the kickoff. They think it'll increase kickoff returns from 33% in 2024 to 60 to 70% in 2025. I know you started hot on the idea last year, and it fizzled for you because there wasn't as many. But now I think there's going to be at least double.
I'm good for that too. I guess that would be a good question to ask Coach Hightower. The special teams coordinator of the Chicago Bears. Does the kickoff return group take a different? Does that group of personnel take a different priority than maybe in the past?
Yeah, somebody suggested more running backs taking kickoffs now.
I think whoever sees the field the best, you got the creativity of wide receivers in open space, and then you got the willingness of if you have running back that has special speed, I don't think that you're going to put a guy that is a 2 yards in a cloud of dust type of guy.
Yeah, Coach Hightower is here in Florida and a part of the meetings because he's on that committee with special teams coordinators to get the right plan, and he's obviously for it. Okay, are aches, pains, or injuries keeping you on the sidelines? Well, Athletico's movement experts are here to help you turn your setbacks into comebacks and create a personalized game plan for your recovery with no prescription or referral needed. Athletico Physical Therapy is where your comeback story begins. Athletico, proud to be the official physical therapy partner of the Chicago Bears. Tom, some final thoughts before we let you go.
I'm glad that they tabled the push because if we are sitting here arguing and talking about that, Jeff, you got to be happy right now that I'm not on social media, because that whole debate about the tush push, it insults me to the point where if they tried to tell Walter Payton he couldn't hurdle over the goal line when he scored a lot of touchdowns that way, because he's so good at it, we can't let him be the only one that can do it. So that was an argument for another day.
From what I gather, they tabled it because it was pretty spirited in there, and it started delving into a lot of other rabbit holes about other areas of the field, special teams. Why is special teams a lot? And I'm looking at it like you. I'm looking at it a very specific one offensive play. I'm not interested in what's going on defensively or special teams with those types of things. So I'm hoping it does not change because, again, the effectiveness of it also decreased last year for the Eagles because defensive coaches are coming up with plans to stop it. And you didn't have that special center you had in Kelsey with Philadelphia back in the day. Juergen's a very good one, but they're not the same player, so they had less of a success at it. And really only two teams are running it a lot. And, so there's a lot of variables here.
In the NFL Rules Committee, there's one ex-player on the NFL Rules Committee.
I didn't know that.
And so now and that's John Lynch.
Okay.
And so now you have a bunch of guys that have never been in a stance in their life, and they're arguing the physicality of a goal line play. I just don't like. Not everybody runs it because not everybody else can run it, because sometimes they don't have the personnel that can get the play run successfully. And, sometimes I guess you just got to think of some way to put your defensive personnel, go and draft that 490 pounder defensive lineman. And every time they want to run it, put him right over the center.
The guy who just ran a sub-6?
5.93.
Yeah. I couldn't run a 5.93.
No, and he did it at 494 pounds or something.
Exactly.
Go draft him, and if you're in that division, draft him, and every time they line up for the tush push, put him right over the center.
Great stuff. It's why I love this sport. I try not to meddle too much with the sport. I hope they don't continue to do that. I had a lively discussion with the local writers about this very topic, and almost unanimous. There were a couple guys that wavered. They couldn't just give me a yes or no. They had to qualify. No qualifying. It's a yes or no. Keep it or don't. And it was 90% keep it just from the local media. I won't tell you who is trying to get into the argument, into the weeds on that topic. So, all right,
my number.
Exactly. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much. The NFL annual meeting, the owners' meeting. Version of episode 138 of the Bears Etc. podcast is now in the books. For Tom, I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe now on the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.